One of the greatest achievements of the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela is the housing mission. This began in 2011, where it said its goal by 2013 was to construct 3 million homes for the poor. Right now, anyone who is below the minimum wage can receive housing for free. Anybody who's just generally poor but not below the minimum wage can receive subsidies to help them pay for housing. This has been a huge achievement in increasing the living standards of people in Venezuela, one of the accomplishments of socialism in the country, not of capitalism, which actually did the opposite. And that is what made it the perfect target for right-wing terrorism in the country. The neoliberal-backed terrorists, the ones being funded by the U.S. government, right-wing forces, decided to firebomb the establishment by throwing Molotov cocktails into the headquarters of the housing mission. Now, the building was set ablaze and over 1,000 workers had to be evacuated from the building. Now, as if this wasn't enough, the flames threatened to spread to a preschool which was next door, where 89 children had to be evacuated. They ranged from 6 months old to 3 years old. Now, according to a statement made by Jorge Arianza, the vice president of Venezuela, it was not until the early evening the fire actually got under control, thanks to the efforts of firefighters and the Venezuelan National Guard. In the course of the response to the firebombing attack, the head of the National Guard said they arrested 27 people in connection with the fire. He also went on to denounce the local police for seemingly being completely unaware that anything was going on, and it seemed like that they were just completely absent from the area. I mean, this is the center of the municipality, and yet the police were absolutely nowhere to be found. In the cases of Baruta and Chacao municipalities, there was no authority. Violent people stroll about comfortably, including the same people that we have fully identified at the site of the act. These are people who want to create a feeling of chaos in Caracas. How disgustingly low can this be? Right-wing forces are threatening the lives of children, putting children's lives as some as young as 6 months old, in order just to carry out the policies of U.S. imperialism. We keep hearing over and over and again in the media how these are like legitimate protesters who have legitimate beefs against the country, and that the government refuses to engage in dialogue. Nicolas Maduro has said repeatedly, come engage in debate, send your leaders, we will talk to them. And yet instead they firebomb things that help people. It's housing for the poor. How can you hate that? Because that's the very essence. That is a perfect symbolism for what's going on in Venezuela. That's a perfect icon to attack. The fact that oil revenue is being used to help the poor. That's what this government is all about, helping the poor. So is it not perfectly appropriate that the right-wing forces would attack something that's intended to give housing to the poor? This is very appropriate. And meanwhile, this entire time, the Western media seems to be absolutely nowhere. If so much as one person dies in a riot, usually actually killed by one of the right-wing protesters, it's all over denouncing the Venezuelan government as being evil and totalitarian and doing all kinds of terrible things. Yet here we have a blatant act of terrorism, even going so far as to threaten the lives of little children. And the Western media, where are they? They absolutely cannot be found. The media belonging to imperialism is turning a blind eye to these blatant and malicious terrorist attacks. Now here's what Nicolas Maduro has to do. He has to stop being a liberal. He has to stop with this bourgeois parliamentarianism and finally enact the dictatorship of the proletariat. These people are running wild to the point where they're allowed to threaten children's lives in this way, because he won't take that last step. Just march the troops in, take over all their media that's being controlled by foreign powers, march them in, take it over. If you find their party headquarters, like obviously they know where it is, march the troops in, shut it down. No more imperialist puppets. Stop taking this. Stop letting Venezuela be torn apart by U.S. interests. Get it done. It's called the dictatorship of the proletariat for a reason, because it's not the dictatorship of the capital. It's not the dictatorship of the bourgeois. It is called class warfare for a reason. March them in, put an end to it. Take these 27 people, put them on trial, and if they're found guilty, hell, shoot them in public. Set an example. Agents of U.S. imperialism will not be tolerated in Venezuela. Do it. Put your foot down, Maduro. And other communists need to start supporting this too. Because a lot of them, particularly on Facebook, say things like, oh, I don't really like North Korea, but I'm really liking Venezuela and what they do. That's my kind of thing. Well, here's a news flash. What Nicolas Maduro is doing is called social democracy. It's not even actually socialism, because there's no dictatorship of the proletariat. North Korea is actually more socialist than Venezuela is, and Venezuela is not socialist at all. It has no dictatorship of the proletariat. The state is not marching in and shutting down the capitalist class like it should. Kim Jong-un would put his own capitalist uncle to death rather than let the country fall into the hands of reactionaries. And Nicolas Maduro seems to be just content to let them run around firebombing government buildings. I mean, what's wrong with him? He's got to march in there and get us. Western Marxists have to start getting it, like first world Marxists have to start getting it to their head that it's called class warfare for a reason. You have to go in there and start cracking skulls. I mean, this is a perfect symbol of white liberalism. Oh, we don't want that whole, war thing, the class warfare. We want a nice, safe, white, social democratic takeover through peace and understanding and voting, none of which actually challenges the power of the capitalist class, which is controlling everything. That's the problem. They're first world Marxists. They're basically Eurocons. They're not getting that you have to fight, you have to kill, and people are going to die. And that's why people like me, third worldists, don't believe that really revolution is possible in the first world. Because they won't fight. Because of the privileged position the first world has, particularly whitish cracker type privilege, people aren't willing to step up and fight. And because they have a vested interest in keeping imperialism. Because it gives them nice, soft, social democratic views. It gives them the possibility of nice, soft, social democratic policies. The third world doesn't get that. There is a global class divide, and revolution does have to come from the third world. It's statements like these that show that it is the third world that has to be revolutionary, and the first world, it just can't. Not in this type of situation. Not as long as first world peoples are net appropriators, net beneficiaries of imperialism. It's just not going to happen. Nicolas Maduro has to stop being a first world Marxist and start cracking heads. Because after all, he says he's a communist. He came from the Communist Party. He's got to start acting like one. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.